3 months' rainfall in not much more than a day, and this was the result. Once again, a series of dramatic images demonstrates the power of nature and its consequences.
We do need the government to actually sit and listen, not say they're going to listen, but actually listen.
They say it's climate change, but is it? They say flood defences could stop it, but could they? Tonight we'll try to sort fact from fiction. Good evening. There may never have been rainfall quite like it. There certainly hasn't been since records began back in the 1880s. We often hear about a month's rainfall in a day. This is Britain, after all. But in Cumbria, the heavens opened for the sum total of a day and a half and managed to dump 3 months of rainfall onto the hills below. The result was startling to look at, inevitably, and miserable to be a part of. The government said there had been a number of weather-related deaths, but the distress was notable in all those affected. Even the Prime Minister conceded that flood defences weren't enough this time. Well, obviously, one might say. We'll look in a moment at whether he and his ministers could and should do more, or whether we just have to accept this is the inevitable result of a changing climate. We'll look at whether that really is the cause too. But first, the picture on the ground, or what you can see of it.
A sea of dirty water is once again swirling through Carlisle. They were told it wouldn't happen for another 100 years, but the experts were wrong, and the people of this northern city are paying the price. 3 days after the deluge, another family are helped to safety. They escape unharmed, but know it will be months before they can live here again. It takes strong nerves to go back and see the damage. But Nicola and David can take some comfort. They're due to get married this Saturday, and against the odds, their cake has survived. David Cameron came to see the new raised defences that were supposed to save Carlisle, but in the end couldn't cope. Just down the road, mother of two, Lisa Boyko, let the Prime Minister see what the water had done. There was remarkably little bitterness.
Obviously, I didn't want to be flooded, but you know, it's happened now, so we've just got to deal with it.
Right. This is your home, which you had to evacuate yesterday.
Yeah.
Sunnyside, well, that's
Water
ironic.
level.
Even couples like the Farquharsons, flooded for the second time in a decade, appear philosophical as they show me how much higher the water was this time round.
Did you believe that because they built these flood defences, you really would be all right this time?
Yes. When they said there was a serious risk of flooding, we thought, well, it won't be as bad as last time. Wrong.
But surveying the damage inside brings back memories of the 7 months it took to repair and rebuild in 2005. It's a daunting prospect.
The waters have receded very fast. At their height yesterday, they were at around 4 feet. That's about my shoulder level. What remains now is the distressing job of going back into their houses and salvaging what they can in ruined homes.
Despite the falling levels, there's still 5 feet of water in the cellar of this terraced house. Pumping it out is the start of months of upheaval. Volunteers at the Greystone Community Centre hand out food and provide temporary beds for those unable to stay at home and with nowhere to go.
I just cried when I walked in.
We walked in at 6:30 yesterday morning and completely unaware. We didn't even know where the building was, and they've just been amazing.
There is a strong spirit in this city. It's about to be tested again as forecasters say more rain is heading their way. Juliet Bremner, News at 10, Carlisle.
The word people have tended to come back to this weekend is unprecedented in speed and, of course, in volume. From the hills of the Lake District to the towns engulfed by flooded rivers, no one has seen anything quite like it before. We asked Dan Rivers to follow the passage of that water and assess its impact along the way.
A destructive torrent that has altered the very topography of its course. This is Coaldale Beck, normally a tiny stream, now a swollen ribbon of water which has shifted tons of gravel and rock. Fed by countless runoffs from the mountains around, the ancient bridge, which has withstood many a winter storm, is only just standing. These brooding skies have delivered weather that has broken records. and homes. The village of Braithwaite is now assessing the damage. Paul Barnes' family has farmed here for generations, but they've never known their house to be flooded like this. The result, he says, of mismanagement of the waterways.
We had a village plan formed a couple of years ago. The National Trust, the Environment Agency, everybody was involved. What the villagers wanted to do, they wouldn't let us do, so it hasn't happened. And we wanted to clear all the willow trees off that Beck banking, because we said when a big flood comes, they'll all get washed off the rock, because they couldn't get the roots in, and they'll block the bridges and take the bridges. And that's exactly what's happened.
There is damage and anger in every corner of this community.
There are a lot of lessons to be learned, and we do need the government to actually sit and listen, not say they're going to listen, but actually listen and then do what we would like and what we want.
But for now, it's the villagers doing the hard work themselves.
You just don't know who to help first, though, do you, with looking at all the devastation that there is. It's just shocking. So, yeah.
How are people coping with it?
I think the team spirit comes out very well. The village spirit of everybody is amazing.
But although the situation in villages like Braithwaite is bad, the problem is exacerbated when all that water comes cascading off these hills and ends up down in the valley below. There, it's got nowhere left to go. And here's where it's ended up. A new addition to the Lake District thanks to Storm Desmond. The inexorable journey of millions of gallons of water following the gradient. These fields will take weeks to dry out, and there's more rain on the way. The water flows out of these valleys with cruel inevitability, pummelling everything in its path as it finds its way down to the sea, leaving vast tracts of debris in its wake. Trees that had taken decades to grow ripped from their roots in minutes. Today a huge clearance operation was underway to unblock footpaths and roads clogged with timber. In Cockermouth, the river is churning with a ferocity that suggests this is a once-in-a-lifetime event, but it's not. The town flooded 6 years ago. Sue Eccles shows me what's left of the Christmas display in the Trout Hotel. It took 7 months to repair the damage last time, and she's braced for a lengthy closure once again. Oh, and it was all laid out for what, a Christmas party or something?
Yeah, the hotel was fully booked on the Christmas package and the New Year package, obviously Christmas party time as well. We had a lot of bookings for lunch and dinner, so yeah. And the phones are still ringing.
The phones are still ringing. Across Cumbria, the waters may be receding, but the damage is a legacy that will last well beyond Christmas. The frightening power of Mother Nature has left many with very little to celebrate this festive season. Dan Rivers, News at 10 in the Lake District.
Well, the Met Office is still collecting the information to work out exactly how much rain fell and where, but the figures they have already supplied include at least one that breaks existing records. 405 millimetres, fractionally under 16 inches, fell on one part of the Lake District in just 38 hours. There has been lots of talk today about inadequate defences, but could anything really cope with that? In fact, we always demand that the government should have done more, should do more, should spend more. So could it? And should it?
Sitting in a valley, there was little chance that Keswick would escape the onslaught of rain this weekend. This was the town's state-of-the-art flood defences on Saturday evening. The rain has been phenomenal. An average December normally sees around 146 millimetres of rain. In Keswick this weekend, 178 millimetres fell. That's 7 inches in just 48 hours. That's put huge pressure on the rivers, including the Greta. The water peaked at almost 5.5 metres, which is almost 70 centimetres higher than the previous record set 6 years ago, and the level which the flood defences were built to deal with.
The water was all over. Was pouring over the top of the defences all the way along.
Graham Thompson's been leading the rescue and recovery.
We were surprised in the fact that we got such a high rainfall event. When we came in the next morning, then Keswick was looking like the Somme. Where we are at the present moment was covered with mud, there were trees, there was even a tree balanced on the top of the glass wall. It really was quite frightening.
£45 million has been spent on flood defences in Cumbria since 2005. The majority, £38 million in Carlisle, and a £6 million investment in Keswick. But across England, spending on flood defences is due to fall by 14% this year. This is one of several bridges closed here in Keswick as a result of the unprecedented rains this weekend. The truth is, though, that these sorts of extreme weather events will happen even more often in future. As our climate warms, there'll be stronger storms out at sea. More powerful storms more often mean more destruction here on land. Flooding is the UK's biggest climate change risk, but there might be only so much we can do for certain parts of the country.
We will never be able to defend against every situation that occurs, you know. I mean, that is the sad truth, really. You know, nearly all of our towns and cities are, for really good historical reasons, built on rivers, often, you know, where 2 or 3 rivers join. And, you know, what flood defences can do a really good job in protecting people. When you see extreme conditions like we've had over the past weekend, that is always going to test them.
That will be little solace to Keswick and many towns like it across the UK, which are increasingly feeling the power of the rising water. Alok Jha, News at 10, Keswick.
So, the question Alok's report there obviously begs is, what are we spending and what more could we do? Well, the Environment Agency has a formula. Every £1 spent on defences should prevent £8 worth of damage. The total budget for all that work is £695 million, but that's to spend on preventing river, coastal and surface water flooding. It might seem like a lot of money, but when you think that 1 in 6 properties in England is at risk of some kind of flooding, 5.2 million homes in all, it doesn't seem quite so much. And if you were to compare that figure to, say, what we spend on defending ourselves against external threats, it is 1/50th of the £34 billion defence budget this year. And as we know, that figure is going up. Maybe you think that's an appropriate parallel and maybe not. Nevertheless, there is a huge difference. Now, Alok is with us still. Alok, I think we can see the flood defences behind you there, but you said, you know, we talked a little bit about climate change earlier. Can we be certain this is the result of climate change?
Well, any responsible climate scientist will tell you that you can't attribute any single extreme event like the floods here in Cumbria this weekend to climate change. But I spoke to the Met Office earlier today, and what they told me was that their knowledge of the atmosphere, their models of the weather systems tell them that there is a very strong link between events like this and climate change. So for our purposes, we can assume, yes, that it is to do with climate change, and that means that for our purposes in terms of planning, that's going to be very useful information. Scientists can attribute things, individual events, to climate change, but it takes a lot of scientific work to do that, and that hasn't been done for this case. But for us, I think we can assume, yes, climate change is one of the causes for it.
OK, well, as I said, we can see the failed defences right there behind you. If we'd spent hundreds of millions of pounds more on defences like that, would it have protected people's homes in the end?
Well, you can spend as much as you like building ever higher flood defences, but there's always a cost-benefit analysis. Flood defences are expensive, and you only build them for the last set of floods. These things would have been fine if you had the 2009 floods. But the thing is that ultimately you can't spend all the money on doing that, because people here, for example, were saying to me, you know, we don't want to just have huge walls around our rivers. We want to have a life that is kind of pleasant as well. Now, the Climate Change Committee, the UK's most senior advisors on climate, have been worried about the government's cutting of flood defences. They've been saying that every time you cut the funding, what you're doing is actually pushing bills further into the future. We're storing up bills of something like £3 billion because we're not spending enough on flooding. You can't stop flooding forever, but what you can do is stop its worst effects, get people prepared, get people to live with it better.
Alok, thank you very much indeed.